All right, hello and welcome to our webinar on foster care in the Roanoke Valley. Before we start, if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A box. We will try to answer as many as we can at the end. So I'm Channa Levine, I'm a Girl Scout, and our panelists today are Amber Tiller, Ben Jones, and Stephanie and Dustin Wimbish. So Amber Tiller is the resource coordinator for recruitment and community outreach for the Roanoke County Department of Social Services. Ben Jones is the supervisor of foster care, adoptions, and resources for the DSS. And Dustin and Stephanie are amazing foster parents who are currently caring for 8 children. All right, let's get started. So our first questions are for Ben and Amber. And so the first question is, what is foster care and who is affected by foster care?
Sure, I'll take that one. That's a big question. The origins of foster care go all the way back to medieval times when the community would take care of orphans, or even when lords would transfer children between themselves to cement alliances. Foster care is very, very old. You might even say that Moses was in foster care with the Pharaoh. So it's a very old term. How we manage foster care now is foster care is used when children in our community cannot be maintained safely with their birth parents or current caregivers. In those cases where all of our efforts don't achieve safety despite everyone's best work, we utilize foster parents in our community. They're trained locally to take care of local kids. Foster parents receive around 30 hours of training to start with, and then it only goes up from there, including annual training and full background checks for every adult in the home. Foster care is what we call substitute caregiving, meaning it's a temporary arrangement for a fully approved, safe adult or family to take care of a child whose family has not met the bare minimum for safety and well-being. Foster care these days also includes kinship. So your grandparent can, I always use the Moses analogy. That was not specifically for this crowd. The Moses story, I also use King Arthur and Superman as foster care examples because that's exactly what it was. But yeah, foster care is very much part of our Western civilization. But yeah, so kinship foster care is a newer thing where your grandmother, your aunt, your uncle, your godparent, your best friend's parent, your coach, anybody that you're connected to can be your foster parent while your family works to achieve safety and permanency in your home of origin. We have a lot of kinship foster parents in our traditional and our advanced foster parenting classes. Foster care at best is a temporary respite with a family that loves you and takes care of you. But we understand at DSS that foster care also means trauma. It is really, really painful for kids of any age to be abruptly removed from their family that they know and going in to live with someone that they may not know. Our kinship foster families helps minimize that pain, but foster care is traumatic. And even if the home you're in is not suitable and not safe, it's still the home you know with the people you know. And it's the reality that you have become accustomed to. So foster care is safety. Foster care is stability. Foster care is trauma. And then foster care is the beginning of a journey back to your family, not the end. Amber, what would you add to that?
I think I was going to contribute a little bit more just in regards to the trauma and kind of, looking out for foster families. So more of my position is designed to figure out where in our community people are able to give as foster parents and where they might be able to give in other avenues, such as donations or being able to have information sessions like this, like Channa has collaborated with me on. And so essentially, we want to target parts of the community, and I say target kind of loosely in regards to the fact that there are kids that need to be taken care of locally, as much as I know there are kids worldwide that need to be taken care of. The children locally are experiencing some high stress situations, and I think that is foster care. Foster care is not something that is welcomed upon kids. It is not something that they asked for. It is a really stressful situation that we try to make a little bit better by giving them a really amazing family. It just doesn't happen to be their family. So I second what Ben said. Foster care involves a lot of trauma. It involves a lot of resources. It involves a whole entire community around those foster parents of people being willing to say, we are willing to step into the minefield with these kids because they've experienced really hard things. So I think there's a lot of different elements to foster care. So I think it's a really great question. It's just got a ton of answers to it.
And one last thing I'll say is foster care affects our kids in foster care. It also affects our foster parents and our families. I hope that Stephanie and Dustin get to talk a little bit about not just their experiences, but how their fostering affected their extended family, their network, how some of our local foster homes lose connections because of misunderstandings or prejudices, and some of our foster homes have found more connections because of the community that is here and that exists. So foster care changes your network and your support system, ideally for the better. But there are folks who, for instance, I learned how to do foster care in Alabama, and foster parents who were fostering kids of a different race sometimes lost family members in their network because of internal biases in that culture down there, where some people really didn't accept that you could be one color and your foster child could be a different color. On the other hand, we've seen amazing, graceful, nearly, I would say nearly divinely inspired connections between our foster parents and our birth families. Oftentimes, our birth families probably could have been removed themselves when they were children. The lessons that they're living in and as their adulthood were lessons they learned as very little kids that were the wrong lessons, but they certainly fit the circumstance. So oftentimes our foster families get to be mentors to our birth families and help them see what a healthy relationship looks like, see how people make decisions thinking longer term than next week, see that you can construct a life that you can manage yourself without additional substances to cope. That's also something. Foster care is actually a pretty big concept. It evolves in many different ways. And again, Stephanie and Dustin have done some amazing work. I know that their part is coming up. I just want to make sure that they have an opportunity when that moment comes to talk about how their, not just their internal world and their family and in themselves, but how their external world changed. I hope for the better. I think there's some positives there, but that foster care asks a lot of you. And it definitely gives back. I have most of my foster parents find being there for a child and on their worst day, their literal worst day, probably their family's worst day, and helping them heal from that worst day and helping them see a different path, helping them learn to forgive, if not accept, and helping them learn to see their parents as humans who are doing their best with the tools they had, and maybe see that they can be safe with their family again, and maybe see that they don't have to walk the same path. Foster care is a very sacred responsibility that we take on. And I hope that that is reflected in our families. We've got some great speakers coming up, but foster care is a pretty weighty topic. Hannah, do you want me to go into the next question of what the main purpose and why it matters? Oh, hang on, I got Ms. Powers asking, does it fail or succeed? Why or why not? And what role does the media play? Oh boy, Miss Powers.
And is it okay if I take on some of this, Ben?
Let me answer the first one, and I'll let you answer the media one. Is that fair?
Sure.
And when you answer the media one, be sure and talk about Lifetime and the TFC network. So our foster care system succeeds based on kind of three measurements. The feds have mandated called safety, permanency, and well-being. Safety means you're not being abused today. We do pretty good at that. We have really good foster homes. We have very good screening, and most of our foster kids are safe. I believe all of them, but our foster kids are safe from recurrent abuse in our foster home. So that we go. Number one, safety check. Well-being, that's harder to measure. Well-being is different for every person. I think our foster homes do a pretty good job, and our foster care system does a pretty good job at well-being. Permanency means you know where you belong and you are with the people you belong with into adulthood and afterwards. On that, we are very hit and miss. We are really bad at permanency for teens. Once someone comes into care, if their age ends in teen, oftentimes it is hard for them to stay in a foster home. It's hard for us to find a foster home for a teenager. So if you come into foster care as an older kid, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, you may not find a home that you match with. You may not stay in that home, and you may not find a connection to that family like you would if you were 4 or 5. So older kids in foster care, probably our outcomes are pretty poor compared to younger kids, because developmentally their needs are different. I think overall we're still netting better work than we do poorly, but the older a foster child is, the more challenging their needs are, and the harder it is for us to reach that threshold. And I cede the rest of my time to the congressman from Fincastle.
And yeah, I would add, to the succeeding or failing, that kind of ties in, I feel like, to the media question. But as far as succeeding or failing, I guess it depends on which motive you're looking at. A lot of people come to foster care in regards to foster care and adoption. I think we have a higher rate of adoption than we would like to. But I believe that in regards to, failing, I think we've failed the system when we haven't given the biological family enough chances. And then we failed the system when we haven't let the kids come to the conclusions for themselves, and we have told them what to believe in regards to, like, your parents are bad. And then they have to live with the rest of their life being like, I am biologically bad because my parents are bad, which is, shaming and hard, and it's not fair to them or to the family. So I think it definitely is subjective, like Stephanie and Dustin commented, and we could literally talk about that for a very long time, but I will not. So Ben, I think you answered that question beautifully. And in regards to the media, I think we could look at it from a different perspective in regards to we have relationships with the news media that are able to talk about the hard things that are happening in foster care. But at the same time, it's really easy to see shows and things that talk about media or that are on media in regards to foster care and immediately think, well, foster care is too hard for me and I couldn't attach. And I couldn't attach like they could, or I couldn't, care for those teenagers who are going to ruin my whole house, or I couldn't work with that biological family that's going to come and try and steal the child in the middle of the night. When that kind of contributes to something I know Hannah was going to mention a little bit later, talking about misconceptions. And our teenagers in care are very misunderstood, have been through a ton of trauma. And understandably, they have, 13 to 17 years of distrust built up. So there's an understandable amount of they're not going to be able to trust a caregiver because they haven't been able to for such a long time that, like, biologically their body just will not let them. They're still in survival mode. So they may be rambunctious and they may have really difficult attitudes and sometimes behaviors, but I think that it's completely fair once you step back and look at it from a trauma perspective. So I think that sometimes the media can overplay foster care. I think sometimes they get it right, though. I do feel like it starts the conversation about what does trauma actually look like, and that's at least a good conversation to have. So that would be kind of my contribution. And Hannah also said we're answering questions at the end. So thank you for letting me know, because I could get on the media relations topic for a little while. So Hannah, what were your other questions for us?
All right. So, you touched a little bit on this. What are some common misconceptions about foster care?
I can jump into this one. Okay, so like any large, stable government institution, foster care has a lot of misconceptions that are related to pieces of true information that have been extrapolated in incorrectly. So there is a myth out there that social workers get a bonus for removing children. That is untrue. If we did, I am missing many, many, many checks from my days in CPS. What I can say is that the federal government sends funding to the states for every foster child as they're required to, else we wouldn't be able to stay open. That's not the same thing as a bonus. None of us see the funds. Another misconception that we're going to hopefully dispel pretty soon is that foster parents are in it for the money. It is not enough money. It is, if any of you have ever tried to feed 2 6-year-olds as they develop, or a 12-year-old and a 17-year-old, I know the Wimbishes are holding up their fingers. What the state provides financially is intended to be a support, not a replacement for the cost of fostering. The foster parents go years without the support, that we call it maintenance, without the maintenance being increased as part of the cost of living. Nobody in my local program is making a profit off of fostering unless they are cutting corners somewhere dramatically. And in that case, we will close their home. Another misconception is that we don't want to send kids home. We are desperate to send children home to their families as soon as they can be safe. We scour the family tree to all branches. We pull credit reports, not to find your credit, but to find anyone you're connected to, anyone you ever live with, any relatives, anybody ever shared an address. We go to extraordinary lengths to find someone in your family that is safe and willing to work with us. Another misconception is that we send kids home too fast. Let me tell you, the federal guidelines require us to prepare to send a child to a safe caregiver within 12 to 15 months. We have to make reasonable efforts. And if a judge orders us to send a child home, which happens, sometimes because we agree, and that's the plan, sometimes because we disagree and the judge disagrees with our plan. We do send kids home, but in every case, at least in our locality, we have a reasonable belief that the safety risks are managed. Foster parents do not put kids in cages. They do not put them to work. That is a very old Dust Bowl type myth that people accumulate foster children in order to have more hands on the farm. That is not the case. And most of these kids are unable and unwilling to do work more than regular chores. They are treated as normal biological kids by our foster families. And so no, there is no for-profit industry out there making money off of foster kids. So those are some common misconceptions. I will say that I have, in the pandemic COVID era, my sweet wife has watched a lot of movies on Hulu and Netflix, and there's an enormous amount of Lifetime Hallmark movies out there. And I would say 95% of those movies portray social services and foster parents as having nefarious motives. I can say without any doubt that 99.999% of all fully approved foster homes are in it for the right reasons. They all have background checks. They all had extensive assessments of their history and their ability to care, and they are monitored pretty closely by the system to ensure that they're doing the best they can. All of our foster care programs have multiple professionals overseeing them. Nobody's lone rangering foster care. There's no one worker out there who just decides not to do their job. There's sometimes over a dozen professionals touching base on a case each week. So there's a tremendous amount of oversight and partnership. There are a lot of folks in and out of our foster homes. So there are opportunities for foster parents to not succeed, for the system to make a mistake, but all of it is done in good faith, as most mistakes are made. And we learn from our errors, and we strive very, very hard to achieve and not make the same mistake twice. There are situations where a decision looks bad in retrospect, and we do our best to learn from those. But overall, foster care is not a corrupt institution. It's simply a last resort. It's where the buck stops. And whenever you're where the buck stops, you're going to get situations that are outside of your control. So that's my spiel. I very much wish there were more positive social worker portrayals out there. My favorite social worker in media right now is Major on iZombie, and he's only a social worker for the first 2 seasons, and after that, he goes rogue. So that's the best I got.
All right. Our next question is, how has fostering changed because of the pandemic? Stephanie, Dustin, would you like to answer this?
Yes, it has actually changed our life more because we are now virtually schooling all of the children at home. I work full-time. I'm a registered nurse by training, but I own my own business. So my husband is a stay-at-home dad, and he just slams it out. My mom lives with us. So that's also another thing. So my mom is a breast cancer survivor, so we can't have people in and out of the home. So with foster care, we have a lot of people in and out of our home every single day. So you have to be even more, Dustin, sorry, Ben, I lost my train of thought on that one. It's off the track.
You're talking about your mom.
I think it adds up.
It literally adds up because these people are in and out of our home, and we have to be very precautious. We don't let people come to our home that we don't personally know. And we know you guys. We know the people we work with. We know the workers, but it still has changed because, hey, when you come in our house and you're a worker, you have to wear a mask. You have to.
I think it also has added just a whole nother level to, I guess you call like trauma almost, that like these kids they're being, removed from a home that they know during a time where everybody's being told to stay at that home. Maybe they weren't going to school and maybe school was their only safe space. And now they have nothing because they go into a new home. They're doing their schooling online. They don't have any connection. They don't have that almost like respite of going to school and seeing their friends and seeing a teacher that they're familiar with. And it just adds this whole other level to foster care that you really have to, not tiptoe around, but just be really careful with, because they're already hurting and they're already confused. And then everybody is thrown into this new era of the world that we don't know 100% how to operate in it. And on top of that, you're trying to welcome, someone else's child into your home and make sure that they're safe in a time where it's really hard to make sure everyone's safe because of COVID and other things that are going on, and who knows what'll come next. So it just adds a whole other level.
Do the best that you can to keep you and your family safe.
And there's no training that could prepare you for something like that. When we made the decision for me to be a stay-at-home dad, there was no COVID wasn't a thing yet, and
you thought they'd all be at school.
I thought they were going to be at school.
I only have one baby who's 2.
Yeah. And so, there's no amount of training that can prepare you for something like this, but we do the best we can. And fortunately, we have a lot of good resources. We have a lot of great people. We do have people in and out of our home, regardless, who are very safe. They're very caring about our family. They're very cautious.
But it's also made our family closer because we haven't been able to go anywhere.
Yeah, but it makes it a little bit easier to have good resources. So working with a good agency, having good workers, them having good practices about what they're doing, it does make it a little bit easier to deal with, as far as knowing that people still have to come in and out of your home to check on the children that you have in care.
And I will add to that degree, because I think that's a really important part of it for you guys as foster parents, because you have to give up, some of that safety to keep the kids safe, but how can you work around that? I think from a worker perspective, it's given me the chance to provide a lot of, empathy, like empathetic understanding of what the kids go through. Earlier on in the pandemic, it hit me that, I was displaced, literally displaced from my home, and realized that I just kind of had to go with the flow. I didn't know when I was going to see my people again. I think that's how everyone's feeling. We're not sure when we're gonna see our family, when we're gonna get to do the things that we enjoyed doing, when things are gonna get back to normal. And unfortunately, that is what every child in foster care has experienced for the longest period of time. So I think the pandemic has also given people the option of, do you know how terrible it feels to feel like the control was ripped away from your life, and that other people are making decisions for you, and that literally your world is not in your hands anymore. I think that merits the discussion of, that is how these kids felt before COVID came around. And if they have survived that way, feeling that way for however long in foster care, that speaks to how resilient and how amazing these kids are, that they still get up out of bed every morning feeling like that. Much less in a pandemic. So I think it's changed foster care in some ways for the better in regards to, efficiency of some things and being able to do virtual visits or being creative with things. But I've really appreciated the empathetic side of being able to talk to people about the trauma.
All right, thank you for that. And we're now going to be talking to Dustin and Stephanie. So why did you guys decide to become foster parents?
So I have the easiest, simplest explanation. I knew they were going to ask, and I practiced this question, and I rambled on, and I said, see, babe, I can tell you I won't ramble, but I will anyway. Literally, my husband and I thought, okay, we are a family of not a traditional family. Like, what's a traditional family anymore? Okay, you guys, let's be honest. What is it? I don't know. My husband and I got married. He adopted my son when he was 9. He was at our foster parent graduation, and now he's almost 15. These people know him. They know, watched him grow up. So we chose, okay, how can we make a difference in our local community? It's great when people help overseas, and it's so wonderful to reach out across the country, but what about right here? Okay, every child we have taken in has been from Roanoke, okay, Salem, Vinton area. It's here. There's a big need, and it was time for us to basically stop talking about making a difference and do it. Yes or no?
Yeah, no, she's right. I mean,
and that was it. We were talking and talking and talking. And what is stopping us? We have a home. We have all you need is a bedroom and love. So, you know what I mean? And some time, patience. But you need patience with all kids. So, do you agree?
So what was foster parent training like?
It was very good.
I actually,
they did a great job with the training. It was very informative. There was a lot of information to take in. It's a whole lot of work. It's a lot of I'll say it. I'm getting ready to be 36 years old. I'm an Army vet. I don't do my feelings. And when you're getting into that training, you have to get into your feelings. It's not just the training, but foster care in general forces you to face some things that maybe you've dealt with in your life and things that you've experienced that you're being now taught that, hey, these might not have been the best things to have happened to you. And the training really opens your eyes to that kind of stuff. I was really surprised about the push to stay connected to biological family. I had a lot of preconceived notions about foster care based on what Ben said, stuff that's out there in the media. You only hear about the bad things really on the media.
Things that aren't even true.
Yeah.
And we've talked about that. Yeah. There was someone who brought their biological mother or brought the biological mother of one of their children who we have kept in touch with. And I literally talked to that woman today. And I said, you are the reason I am so passionate about biological families. So it's the training is fabulous. It's wonderful. It's long, but it is so rewarding and worth it, just like anything else you do. And you can only learn more, right? You can't unlearn.
I'd even go so far as to say that even if you never ended up having a foster placement or bringing a child into your home, just having that training and getting the education and being informed about what's happening in your community is priceless. I mean, just
vulnerable population, which are our children.
Just knowing what's going on. The first night when they talked about just the pure, the numbers of kids in care and stuff like that.
It's heart-wrenching. And that's locally.
Knocks your socks off. It really opens your eyes to what's going on in your community. And it really does. Right away in the training, because of the way they present it, that if this is something for you to be able to do or if it's not.
Yep, there's Ben.
Yeah, Ben said.
Well, he only said it, Ben. You have to change it to panelists. You got to change it to attendees. He said 128 kids in care today. What is our relationship with foster kids?
All right. So our next question is it hard for other kids, teens, to have other kids come and live with them?
Sometimes.
I mean, our son was an only child. He was what, 2000, when did we get Faith, Christmas, and Thomas? 2017. So 11, and he is almost 15. He's 10, he's almost 15 now. And the thought of not having his siblings, like just the thought, he can't even, that isn't his world. Every time he is, and I'm going to tell you the one thing that I always say, when people are like, well, how will my other children be affected? Okay, he is the perfect example. My son is compassionate. My son is empathetic. Okay, my son has seen things and heard things that he had no idea his peers. He didn't know things like that and exist in the world, and that cannot be taught or bought.
I mean, we have, several kids in care. We have kids that we've adopted from the system. We have my adopted stepson, and we have one biological child. So having that mix, every child, they don't feel like I'm the one different child. They don't feel, and it, they still have little dust ups and stuff like siblings. It's great. It's actually great to see that when they just.
We know that means they're getting along, like in their hearts.
Yeah. But
if you're hitting each other with Barbies, it's okay.
But having those opportunities to like teach them about something that's a little bit bigger than all of ourselves, and having them have that experience of bringing someone into the home that, some days you're not going to have the best days because of the trauma and because of things that are going on.
That's okay. You can ride that with them.
Yeah. But, submit yourself to this system of foster care. Like some days it's going to make it hard, but being able to like walk through that with your children, it's made us even closer to my stepson.
Yeah. And all of our children.
It really brings us together because you have to do it together. Like there's no like mom and dad do this and I'm not a part of it. Like that's not my.
We're like, let's get in the 12-passenger van and roll. We literally own a 12-passenger van. I said I would never have a minivan. We just skipped the minivan and we went to 12-passenger van, and I own it. It's got stickers. It's golden.
What I can say about foster siblings and biological kids is it's important, and it's a great question because it's important that your whole family be prepared for the foster experience. We've had really good success with some of our families where the entire family has a sense of calling, a sense of mission. We've had success with families that are really flexible, where everyone kind of can bend on their preference and their routine. We've had families really struggle where there are a lot of really rigid rule follower folk that, that can't flex around the larger system and the chaos that comes with someone else's heartbreak and triumph in your home. So the most important thing I would say is when you are considering fostering, talk to your entire family unit, and that includes littles as well as bigs. And we address that in the training to some extent. But there's also an even better resource, and that's our current foster families. If you're considering fostering, we have some great families from all different approaches and all different backgrounds. I can tell you how they navigated that individually, because there is no one way. The Wimbishes are amazing. I'm very proud of how they've navigated a lot of really challenging situations. But their path is their path, and there may be a different path for a different family. And that's okay. But the important thing is that everybody's on board. And absolutely, you can't foster in your family without the entire family agreeing that fostering is for you.
I 100% agree with that. Now, I would like to add that not just your immediate family, not just your kids, but like your whole family, like your extended family, parents, grandparents, cousins, brothers, uncles, anybody that you have a normal like relationship and a normal timing of, like, we always go to Uncle Scott's for
Thanksgiving.
Yeah, for Thanksgiving and like they have to be prepared for that too. Because I'll be 100% honest, in our family, my wife's family has 100% been 100% on board, accepting, dive right in. Hey, there's a new kid at our house this weekend.
My mom lives with us. She moved here because she wanted to be near. She lived with my sister and left because she only had one kid.
Yeah, my mother-in-law lives with us. My family had a much harder time with it. They still struggle with it. And it's not their fault. I mean, it's just sometimes it's the preconceived.
They were loud. And I say
they don't get it. They don't understand the way we live, and that's okay. that's their journey and this is our journey. And as long as you feel like you're doing the right thing for the children that are in your home, you're not wrong.
Nope.
Even if somebody doesn't really like it, whether it's one of your, one of your kids or one of your parents or your neighbor. Like, just wanted to throw that part in there.
All right. So what is the best and the hardest part of being a foster parent?
It's one and the same thing. It's
the
when
best part is when and I get very emotional, so I'm going to get really close and get in on this. When I overheard, when I overheard my 10-year-old today sitting and talking to her worker and her saying, hey, are you ready to start, maybe talking about adoption because you're moving there? And her saying, yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready to talk about that. And me overhearing and going, what'd you say? And her laughing and going, Mom heard me, and me running over there and giving her a hug. And no matter how bad of a day or whatever, week, it doesn't matter, because when she came here, she wasn't ready. And we've not pushed her. And that's the best part, because it shows, you know what, no matter what they say or what they do or what, you are their safe space. And when they finally accept that you're not going anywhere and that you're going to love them no matter what, that's the best part for me. And that's hearing her not knowing I'm listening and you know what I mean, in the living room, she's in the dining room, and just hearing that and her being excited to say she's ready. And that's rewarding. The worst part.
The same for me. The best and the worst thing are kind of one and the same. It's when the goal,
or for them going home
of foster care, like whatever that goal is, if it's return home and you have the opportunity to bond with that child and keep them safe, and you really feel like, man, this is one of my kids, and then the day comes when they say, hey, it's time for them to return home, and you get to work that plan. It's hard,
but it's amazing.
It hurts. It is.
But it's not about us.
You're gonna cry. Your other kids are gonna cry. People are gonna wonder what happened. They're gonna think you did something wrong. They're gonna like whatever, and it's the best feeling and it's the worst feeling. And if it's not both, then you did it wrong.
And that's what we always say. If we hurt even if we do a prevention respite and we were like, oh, what's happening? We're always like, no, babe, we keep each other in check. This child, we are working with this family. We do whatever we can, and to also see the family succeed. It's literally an entire triangle of social services, the bio family, and the foster family. I mean,
that's the best and the worst part is when you do the right thing for the child and
it all works out,
because maybe it's not what you 100% wanted, and maybe it's not 100% what the child wants, but in the end, you know it's the right thing. That's the best and the worst part.
And then they call you and they say, hey, how you doing? Or one of the girls still texts me. Yeah, and I'm like, I send her funny pictures back, and and one of the girls still calls me, and it's just great. And I'm always, how are you doing? And it's wonderful to hear how fabulous they're all doing as a family. And to know that, hey, maybe we're a little side nugget of that family now. Maybe you can invite me to the cookout too. And when COVID's done, and they do, and we invite them over, and sometimes, and it's great. The more people that love a child, the better off they are.
So what are like the foster parents and the DSS? What are your feelings towards the biological family?
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. That's us.
We can do that again.
And we can talk, because our daughter is 18 and she has given us permission. She aged out of the foster care system, unfortunately. Her goal was not return home, but I have a fabulous relationship with her mother. Okay. I have a fabulous relationship. Her mother, I know, has been clean the exact amount of days, because you know what? I text her and I say, how you doing today? I'm doing okay. Her mother has come and floated in the pool. You know what I mean? When she's having a good, it's
a unique, that one's a very unique relationship, but
you have to be the gatekeeper to that relationship.
I'll even say that when we started this whole foster
care journey, these people.
I was way less. I was very much like not anti-bio family, but like again with the preconceived notion of foster care, why kids come into care, like you don't. I was very much against it, and it has really, again, with the training, the experiences we've had, it has really changed my heart as far as that there are families out there, like I think Ben said earlier, maybe they should have been removed when they were children, and they weren't given, the family wasn't given that opportunity, because that's what it was. It was an opportunity to to change their lives, and they
To
weren't
break
given
the
that.
poverty cycle or
And,
break the.
you know, so who am I to be like, oh, well, you messed up as a parent? Like, I'm not perfect. You know,
Nobody is perfect.
but we find those opportunities to work with the bio families when it's appropriate. You know, we take our lead from DSS, like, what are they saying? What are they giving us? You know, who's appropriate? Sometimes you find new people. Sometimes we're the ones that bring you, hey, this is Aunt Jenny who, you know, reached out to the kid on Facebook, and they are like super awesome. And hey, let's introduce you to DSS, and maybe that becomes a new placement. Or maybe it just becomes Aunt Jenny who comes over every once in a while and gets to love on the kids and assist us in caring for them. I mean, it can be a great thing. And our network, like Ben was saying earlier, our network has exploded, not just from foster care and like other foster families, but like the biological families. You find that good wherever the good is there, whatever the appropriate relationship is there, whatever the positiveness is,
like a flower.
and you water that, and it means the world to these kids. Like even if they know that maybe it's not appropriate for them to return home or be in the home at that time, just for someone to show a family compassion that was never
your struggle. I'm not judging you. Yeah.
It means the world to them, and it can help them heal. It can help them heal. It can help the parents heal. It can help the whole family heal. And that's what foster care is about. That's the goal.
Right. And like what Amber said, they're not bad. Their parents aren't bad. Sometimes people do bad things or make bad choices, but it doesn't mean someone doesn't love you in the way that they know how, which was something that was really ingrained on us in training, Ben. And I know, Amber, you weren't there, but you can only love appropriately and healthfully if you are taught those skills. If you are not, you love in the only way you know how. And sometimes it's literally science. You have to rewire neural pathways in these children's brains by teaching them appropriate responses to anger, appropriate responses to some traumatic events, and to know, hey, it's okay to feel the way you do, but this is how you respond.
And I would add to that with Stephanie in regards to the way you know how, in regards to loving kids. One of the things that have stuck with me early on when I experienced training, when I had first come into the job, was one of our foster moms coming in and explaining that she had the option not to teach the child how to love, like, period, but she had the option to teach the child to love a different way than they had experienced. And I really appreciated that, because she said the same thing that Stephanie just said. She said, their parents love them no matter what. They love them. It just might not look like the kind of love that we know. It might not look like an appropriate kind of love, but it's still love. It's just the way that their parents have either been raised themselves, or it is literally what they can give. And so she said, as a foster mom, you know, I hope that this kid can go back to their home, to their family. And then one day they have the choice. They pretty much have a fork in the road to decide, when they raise their family, they can love their kids in a different way, because they now have a different neural pathway, like Stephanie said, to operate in regards to, like, oh, someone loved me this way and it felt more safe and it felt more secure. And my parents loved me this way and that happened, but it may not have been, you know, as, like, they have that choice now. They have that choice to say, I want to choose a different way, because somebody took the time to care for them and teach them a different way. So I would also add that.
And I'll jump in just briefly. The majority of kids in foster care in Roanoke County are in foster care because of neglect, not because of horrendous physical or sexual abuse. We have stories like that. We deal with cases like that, but the majority of our families have abused their children by not taking care of them because of mental health or drugs or both. There isn't the widespread graphic abuse that you may fear. Bad things happen, and you'd be surprised how often kids their needs are unmet because their parents are struggling with their own needs. But the vast majority of kids in foster care are in foster care because of neglect, not because of catastrophic abuse. So many people are afraid to foster because they don't know what they will have to deal with, and one never does know. The Wimbishes have helped us uncover things that things that failed to happen, things that weren't okay for kids that were in their care. But the Wimbishes I don't think they've met a kid they couldn't manage. As long as a young person chose to be in that family, which most of them do. It's a very enticing and engaging backyard, at least, if not for the dogs and the parents and the other kids. But yeah, foster kids aren't scary. Their pain can be scary, but as adults, we kind of have a responsibility to help kids deal with their pain. And that's what foster parents are really good at.
All right. So our next question is, why should other people become foster parents?
Other people should become foster parents if they feel led to do that. I don't think it's a thing that I say that like, oh, anybody should do this, or everybody should do this. Anybody can do it. Everybody can't do it. I think it takes a special type of people to do it. I'm not trying to toot my own horn. But I think that people should do it because they want to make a difference. I think people should do it because they have a love of children and the families and their neighborhood and, you know, their community. I could never be a teacher. Like, I could never be a teacher at a middle school, but if they tried to put all of the middle school children into our home, I would do the best I can to do that. And that's just my difference, is that I feel more led to be a dad than I do a teacher, but you're a teacher at the same time. And it's, you know, so I think people should do it because they want to make a difference. I think they should do it because they care about their children in their community. I don't think everyone should just try it. It's not for the faint of heart. It's not for, you know, it's not always just this, you know, it's not a super easy community service project to do. There's lots of other ways that people can support foster care and foster parents and foster families, and there's lots of opportunities for that. Sponsoring kids at Christmas time, things like that. I mean, when we took in 3 kids in one night, a lot of our friends set up like a meal train and things like that. People don't think are a big deal, but to us, it literally could be a make or break moment in your day when someone else has made a meal for you, so that you can focus on bringing the children into the home, making them feel comfortable, making them feel safe, realizing that they've never had an appropriate bath in their lives, making sure that just whatever they need, you're meeting their immediate needs physically, and someone else has met the need of, like, I needed pizza delivered to my house tonight. So there's lots of opportunities for people.
It's literally DoorDash. Yeah.
Make a huge, huge difference 100%. For the foster people, for the foster parents, for the kids.
People that donate clothes, yeah.
But I think anybody who has, and we say this all the time, anytime we talk to people, because it's what we went through, is if it hits you like a couple of times, like you're like we talked about it, and then we saw a billboard about it, you know, a couple weeks later, and then we were out somewhere and we met somebody and got into this big conversation about it because they did it. We just took that as like, it's a sign. Like, it's not, to me, that's not a coincidence for it to just keep running into it.
Yeah.
So I think if you're discussing it, if you're thinking about it, if you've talked to your family about it and it stays there, then you're the person to do it for sure. If you're not sure and you're feeling really anxious about it and you think it's gonna, you know, be bad, like, you can try, like, go to the meetings. Like I said, the training is going to be good no matter what. Get the training, get involved in some way. Trust me, they're not going to turn anybody away for some form of help. So even if you get into the training and you start saying, hey, maybe this isn't for us, like having them in our home and doing this and changing our lives in that way, but what else can we do? They're not going to be like, nothing, you should just go home now. Like, they're going to find something for you to do. They're going to point you in the right direction, to be a support. Maybe it's just respite, which is just temporary care. You have a child in for a night or two, a weekend or something like that. That's great. We've done a lot of those, and they're lots of fun. They can also be super, not scary, but like just different, because it's, you know, but there's lots of opportunities. And I think that if you're thinking about it at all, you take one of those opportunities and really reach out. Amber would do a good job of finding something for you to do to support foster care in some way
in your local community.
Yeah. What I'll say, the initial question is, why should you foster? One reason is we have 38 local foster homes, Amber, I think roughly 38, and we have 128 kids in care. That means that many of our local kids are in private agencies across the state. Many of them are in group homes or in residential facilities. And many of those kids are eligible for a foster family home, but we can't find one that is a match for them. A lot of our local homes are kind of recruited by our private agencies. And so there's another layer. And those private agencies that particular agency may not want to deal with a kid that may present some challenges that you might actually be a match for, but because you're with that private agency, there's another layer of oversight. We need more foster homes in general. Right now, I think we have 4 homes without a placement out of all of our homes, and those homes get filled pretty fast. Another reason is that these are our local kids. If you are interested in learning about what parenting is like in the system, we have lots of ways to learn. And we certainly will not encourage you to do something you're not ready for, but we very much encourage you to explore, to come to one of our community conversations, ask questions of real foster parents. The Wimbishes are a part of that, but so are some other foster parents with different stories, so you can get multiple perspectives, and then see if you're interested. There's no obligation. If you go through our training, you're not signed like an NFL contract. If you go through the training and decide it's not for you, that's okay too. But if you feel a curiosity or maybe even a hint of a calling, then work with us. And that's what Amber does all day, is working with people who are just kind of considering, inquiring in a discernment process. I will say that families that are used to 100% control of their life, you know exactly who's going where at what time every day on the dot, you may struggle with the foster system. One of the reasons the Wimbishes are a great match for us is they are an extraordinarily flexible family, and they roll with chaos when chaos hits them. That is not required, but if you find yourself really comfortable and needing an extraordinary amount of control, or as some of our controlling friends would say, the basic amount of control over my day, if you need that, that's okay. But if at the end of our classes you still feel the need for that level of control, then we may not be a match for you, because the joy of our system, at least one of the joys, is the unexpected, the grace that happens not expecting it, the tragedy that happens when you're not expecting it, the trust that develops slowly on its own time frame, and the bridge to people outside of your family, counselors, providers, therapists, judges, attorneys, social workers. All of those folks may become part of your family in the sense that they'll be in your home helping you manage a need that is greater than a little heart can sustain. So all of those burdens have to be shared amongst other people. If you don't like having nice strangers in your home, that's also something to really consider, because we have a lot of teams. Most of foster care in 2020 is done using teams to make decisions, teams to meet needs, and teams to deal with crises. And that's something that we are very proud of. No one is the Lone Ranger. And if you like being the Lone Ranger, then 2020 foster care probably isn't for you, and that's okay. But if you want to be at a table of equals, handling existential problems as well as diaper changing and getting people to their dental appointment, that's what foster care is. It does take a village, and it takes different people at different times. Something I'll say about our training, it is long, but it's good, it's entertaining. I've never had someone say they hated what they learned about themselves during training, because a lot of our training is seeing yourself as a system of care, not just being part of a system, seeing your history, your habits, what your parents did and didn't do, and what you're bringing into the present as your toolkit, and then trying to add to that toolbox while making sure that you want to keep every tool that's really there. So it's a good journey, and it's enriching, and we enjoy teaching it. But why should someone be a foster parent? Because they care about kids in our region, our kids in our community, growing up knowing they're loved. It's more than that, but that's where it starts.
And I will just quickly add in a couple of comments to Ben and Stephanie's piece. Just to verify, our foster training is actually free. So it is of no cost, which really matters, because there are some other trainings
time, and we feed you.
in the private.
And they feed you. I'm saying they feed you really well. Just
We
saying,
feed
like,
you
yes, you have to be there for class. But
we do feed you when it's not a pandemic.
Right, but
Pandemic,
they send you cool things, right, Amber? Thanks.
I do. I love sending cool things. I'm about to send out some pullovers and some ornaments. But yes, there are a lot of like fun things. The ornaments are very fun, but they're the ornament activity for the kids. So yes. So we have, activities and things, but I will add, so the foster parent training is free. Our foster parents are great. Also, they're amazing and they just love each other and they love our kids and it's really fantastic. And our staff is also really great. I'm not saying that is like, Ben and I are cool, but we have other staff people who are really great. And the other piece about that, the two other parts were, like, Hannah reached out to me and talked with Ben a little bit. There are creative ways that, Hannah really wanted to help kids locally. And she said, I want to do something. She's working with me on a video. She's working with me on a short, drive. There are creative ways that may not look like fostering that are still helping and they're making a local impact and they're really appreciated and they're really needed. So yes, thank you a bunch, Hannah. And then the last piece that I would add, I will get on the bus every day about teen advocacy. But I will just throw out there that Ben mentioned that we only have about 4 homes that are available. Traditionally, the homes that are available are probably for 0 to 6-year-olds because that is the most popular age to care for. I will throw out a caveat that often people imagine that children that are younger do not experience as much trauma, when actually this is a very false statement. Again, this is a broad brushed, kind of webinar that Hannah did a great job putting together. There are so many deep dive topics, but that is one of them that I forgot to mention in kind of the myths about foster care. Yes, Dustin and Stephanie love their teenagers. The beautiful thing about teenagers is they may not be able to understand all of their emotions and they have a lot of hormones, but they can at least talk to you about them for the most part.
And they don't poop themselves, you guys. Come on, we don't want. I literally said, okay, we had one baby and no way any other children are coming through the front door. No, she's like potty training immediately. There's no, why do you want babies?
Yeah, it's great when they can, talk about it, even if they're 100% wrong about what they're feeling or what they're thinking.
But they're so cool.
And stuff. It's just there's something really special about being able to sit down and actually have the conversation.
And they can tell you what they've been through and how they feel. And you have to tell them, you can teach them to be better coping and then watch them.
Yeah. We both learn way more.
We got our daughter at 14. Our daughter was placed with us at 14. She's adopted in April and she just got into her dream college, Mary Baldwin. And so it's just watching her grow, and she got a $72,000 scholarship over 4 years. So watching her grow from an 8th grade, failing all of her SOLs, I need you guys to know, she almost failed 8th grade, to pass advancing her English SOL and getting into her dream college because she wants to be a social worker. And they're the best school for social work, she said. So it's worth it. I know, I hadn't had a chance to tell you, I'm sorry. I'm surprised.
We're totally with Amber when she starts talking about the teen advocacy.
And it's huge. And seeing, she's the first one in her whole family to go to college. She's going for free.
And I mean, as special as it is, like as great as it is to her younger brother who came to us when he was 14 months old, was basically like a newborn baby. As great as it is to see the change in him and to see him grow up and know that we're the only parents that he's ever going to know, and like just make the impact that we have on him. That is super, super special. But there's just something different about teens. And I know I don't even think this was the question, but Amber opened the door and I'm going to
Amber, every time I'm going to get your
chance I can. We're going to talk through that because it is one of the biggest needs. I mean, Ben said it. It's one of the biggest needs is teens.
They can look at you at the end of the day and she said, Mom and Dad, she wrote a letter that she let us read to Mary Baldwin. That's the reason she got so much money. About the only reason she is where she is because of her parents. I know, Ben, I'm sorry. But
Yeah.
That's the perfect time. And they gave her and said, please, you're amazing. They see what we see. And you guys saw what there was with her there, that she was just a scared girl. And that's all she needed was some love. I'm sorry.
All the kids.
Yeah. And Stephanie and Dustin, I opened that door because they originally.
She knew what was going to happen, you guys.
That was such a bait. She baited us.
Guys, you won't regret it.
Thought that they were going to care for younger kids, and now
literally 0 to 5.
And now they have been amazing parents to kids literally of all age ranges. So I always shout out to Stephanie and Dustin because that is incredible. And speaking of other things that we could do in advocacy, we could literally have a whole other webinar on caring for teens and how incredible and important caring for teens is. So I will throw that out there in case that is of interest. But I want to pass it back to Hannah because she's got some other good questions and I don't want to miss them. But we'd love to see answers.
That's all right. So we're now actually going to go into the questions that people have sent in. So our first one is, can non-traditional families foster? So like single people, various religions.
What is traditional?
Yes, we can't. So in Virginia, they clarified the code in 2012. It is clear we can approve families of varied backgrounds. It basically depends on your family structure. We can't approve people who are separated because we need the finality of either a reconciliation or a finalized divorce, because we can't have people coming and going that we know about. But single people, same-sex couples, people who have decided to cohabitate, those are not barriers. There is no religion that you have to have. Obviously, it's a state responsibility. We do not have a favorite religion. What matters is your family's ability to care for kids in trauma. And nobody can look at you at Walmart and tell whether or not you will be able to do that. I can tell at Walmart some families that might struggle, but in most of the case, we have to get to know you much better, and you have to get to know yourself much better. Our training is actually called Mutual Family Assessment because you learn about yourself and the system learns about you. So you decide if you think you're right for the system, and you decide if the system is right for you. And that's one of the reasons the training is kind of long. It's 9 3-hour sessions because there's a lot to learn and a lot to assimilate and a really big decision at the end. So yeah, the way your family is composed is not a barrier. The only thing is if you are separated but not divorced, we probably can't move forward with that because of that limbo that you are in legal status. But other than that, however your family is constructed, we'll meet you where you are and we'll start learning about each other.
And that's actually a huge misconception that people always say, well, I can't foster because I'm single. I
live in an apartment.
I'm part of the LGBTQ community. That's not true. Okay. We're going into 2021, you guys. You can provide the safe home, like Ben said. They're not profile people.
All right, so our next question is, so what programs do we have for teens who are aging out of foster care? And then do kids typically maintain a relationship with their foster family, like through that?
So there are several things that can happen to you when you're approaching the age of 18. In Virginia, you can agree to remain part of the system, which is kind of a self-entrustment where you as an adult, a young adult, acknowledge that you would very much like to be parented by the state a little bit longer. We call that fostering futures. And that teen can live in a foster home. They can live in their own apartment. They can live with their family and still have the state of Virginia assist them with support like a family would. Like when I went to college, I was 18. I was not especially wise. I had to come home at least once and regroup. And most families offer that to their young adults, especially now that there are so many different paths we can choose from. And the state of Virginia offers that if a young person chooses to between the ages of 18 and 21. There's also something called permanent foster care, where you agree to stay in your foster home and build a permanent relationship without being adopted. We have kin gap, which is where you can actually be adopted by your own relative, depending on the circumstance, and you can remain in that home and receive support until you turn 18. So there are several different paths. Many of our foster kids do stay in touch with their last foster family or their favorite foster family. Not all. The journey of being in the control of the state is difficult, and some of our kids are happy to leave us all behind. And I understand, and I don't begrudge them their freedom from having 5 or 6 adults tell them what they can and can't do. But many of the kids that have built a stable relationship remain in touch throughout the rest of their lives. We have some foster parents who are at grandkids' baptisms because of that long-term relationship. And the best part is seeing that this family that you're connected to has taken a different path than when you met them. And there are no more foster kids in that family, which is really the goal of us as a system, is to change the cycle that our families are trapped in through no fault of their own, in most cases. So yeah, there are avenues, but once you're a legal adult in Virginia, you can make all the bad choices you want. And so we accept them back when they want our help, but we cannot force them. So just like every other 18-year-old, they have a mix of wisdom and bravery that they need to work through, and we're here to help them with both.
All right. So, and then a question is, so this question's for Amber, and so this one says, you spoke about trauma. What services are available to support families help their foster children?
Sorry, I'm trying to unmute. Yes, so in regards to our kiddos with trauma, and Ben can speak to this a little bit too, as well as Dustin and Stephanie. So I feel like I can speak to it a bit, but Ben is holding up a mug and it says stars on it. So that is our specialized treatment foster care program. So essentially what that looks like is we have our local foster parents who get trained about 30 hours, and then our specialized treatment foster care services. You get a little bit more training every year and a little bit more training on the front end, but they're actually local, so it's less cost overall, as well as it comes with a whole different slew of services. So for our kids, some of them are attending, you know, if they're younger, sometimes they have play therapy, or there might be specific, you know, mentor people that are working with them if they're older. I know it looks different for every one of our kids. But for the trauma aspect, I would have to say we're becoming more trauma informed as we learn more about trauma. So I think that looks like some things in the school, working with the schools and letting them know, you know, maybe there are creative ways we can approach this with the kids. Maybe there are creative ways in our community that we can wrap around these kids and let them know, you know, if you're having a panic attack in the middle of gym class, then you have a safe route and you can go through this and this and this. And if there are teachers that understand, okay, they're not acting, because oftentimes I feel like that's the misconception of these kids, like they're acting, they're being dramatic, when in reality, their body just went straight into survival mode and they literally are having to fight to breathe, which is really hard. So I imagine that Ben and Stephanie and Dustin can speak a little bit more to like the specific services, but I know there's kind of a wide array. And there's also sometimes funds that come with different levels of trauma, which mean that we can get a little bit more creative. If the children have more behavioral concerns, sometimes we're able to support that family a little bit more through reimbursement funds. And that might look like more creative services like equestrian therapy or different things. So I'm not sure I fully answered the question, but Ben and Dustin and Stephanie are off mute, so I'll let them answer.
You did good. You did good.
Yeah, ever good.
There are tons of resources. I need you to know you are not alone. Like we will be a resource. Like literally some of my best friends and people I call when I have no one else, because nobody gets it, you guys, are people we met through foster care. The people in our Pride class, some of the people who came and spoke like now and so you're never alone. There's so many resources, especially Ben.
But I mean, you go through all the training, you have these special meetings with the families. I mean, they come together, it's called a FPM, a family planning meeting. They talk about the different, or family partnership, excuse me. They talk about all the different resources that are available. If you have a question, you have wonderful people, you have your workers to reach out to, you have Amber to reach out to. If you're not sure, I mean, we've had kids that do animal therapy, we have kids that do play therapy, we have kids that just do regular counseling, we have kids that have run the entire gamut of, like, let's try 4 or 5 different types of counseling. And it can be overwhelming. Yeah, it can be overwhelming because you run through all of these and you try to find the best thing. But there's no lack of support. If you feel like you're not being supported, it's because you're not asking for the help that you need. Yeah, sometimes they're going to say, hey, this is what you need to do. And this is what, and they're like, no, this is what you need to do. And so you're going to do it. And you do it, and it is what's best for the kid. But you have a whole team. It's like Ben said earlier, sometimes there's 6 or 7 people looking at a case. Yeah, there's just a ton of support.
Doing it right. If you're on an island, you're not doing it.
If you feel unsupported, and stuff, then you're not doing something correct. You're not reaching out. You're not using your resources, and that's something you got to do. You got to reach out and ask for help when you need it. Reach out and ask for a recommendation if you're looking for a support service or a certain type of therapy or something. But you're going to have plenty of help for that.
So some things that we offer to the foster family specifically, in addition to the training, in addition to we have 3 professionals at Roanoke County who work with foster families. We have Amber, who's amazing. We have Emily, who works primarily with our Kinship families, and Aaron, who is our primary trainer. They're very good sounding boards. I'm available as well, but my job is mainly to get out of their way, and I'm happy to do that every time. But we have really good professionals who are very experienced and can point you in the right direction. Oftentimes, we're able to provide services in the home, connected to what the need is. We do provide enhanced maintenance, which is we will pay you more if you're doing more than the standard of care because this child needs something. And we have some tools that assess that. Like if you have a kid, if you have a 9-year-old who is working on toileting, which we wouldn't place with the Wimbishes, if a 9-year-old is working on toileting because it's a medical need, and you have some kind of behavior chart and reward system, we would fund you additionally because of those efforts you're putting that are above and beyond what's developmentally normal for that child. Oftentimes it's for behavioral needs, tantrums, kids with mental health needs that require you to drive more, take into more appointments. We fund additional payments to you to compensate for that. We also have our STARS program, which is my favorite program, and there's lots of things involved with it, including additional training, additional physical people to help support you to do transportation or whatever is needed. And our STARS program has a therapist that is assigned to the foster families, not to the kid, not to the bio families. They have their own therapist. The therapist that's assigned to our foster families to help you process being part of this big, slow-moving system. It is difficult. The Wimbishes are downplaying their struggles, and I appreciate that for this meeting, but it is sometimes very hard to be part of the larger system, to see a child in pain and believe that we just need to stop whatever we're doing or change direction, and to be part of a team that ultimately votes 5-4 to keep going forward with something, or to see this child going through emotional pain that they need to go through to get to the end of their trauma. But watching that and absorbing that and being there night after night is very hard. It's unusually hard. It is more emotional stress than parenting should be. And so we provide supports for that. We recognize that, and we provide supports as best we can. Ultimately, the best support is your other foster families as well. Like we've said over and over again, the cohort is amazing. The collaboration and support is amazing. But there are lots of folks whose job it is to make sure you have what you need to do your job as a foster parent. And that's something we're very proud of.
All right, thank you so much. We are all out of time for questions, but if you have any more, I'll be sending up a follow-up email, and you can contact Amber or Ben with any more questions that you have. And so I just want to say thank you so much to our panelists. Thank you for sharing your information and your stories. A big thank you for all of you attending. I hope you enjoyed it, and thank you so much.
Thank